Once upon a time, on a bright and happy morning, there was a long and beautiful road, a busy and colourful market, and at the end of the road there stood a very big house with a golden porch, and people said, "That is the house of the rich merchant," and it was true, because the merchant was so rich that he could cover the whole street with silver if he wanted to. But he was not foolish. He was a wise and careful man. He knew how to earn money and how to keep it, and he did not waste it for silly things. And this rich merchant had one son, and his name was Sven. And Sven lived in the big house with soft beds, golden sheets, and many servants. And one morning Sven woke up slowly and said, "Good morning, Father," and his father looked at him and said, "Good morning, my son." And Sven smiled and said, "I slept very well, Father, but the rubies on my bed hurt my back." And the father sighed and said, "Sven, you do not need a golden bed with rubies." But Sven laughed and said, "Father, we are rich, and today I will have a party for my friends." And the father asked another party. And Sven said, "Yes, I even bought my friend a big boat, and we will celebrate." And the father shook his head and said, "You bought a boat for your friend, and now you pay for the party too." And Sven answered, "They love me, Father. They think I am great." And the father looked at him and said slowly, "They love your money, not you." But Sven did not listen, because Sven liked people to like him. And one day the father called Sven and said, "My son, I am old now, and one day all this will be yours." And Sven's eyes shone with joy. And the father said, "But promise me one thing. There is an old trunk in the attic, and it is not an ordinary trunk, no matter what happens. Never give it away." And Sven said, "Yes, Father, I promise." And not long after that, the father became ill and passed away, and Sven was very sad, but soon he became the owner of all the money, the house and the things, and people said, "Now Sven is very rich," and Sven started to live like a king. He had parties every day, music every night, new furniture every morning, and the house looked different each day, and his friends came again and again. They ate, they drank, they laughed, and they said, "Sven, you are the best." And Sven felt happy because he liked to hear those words, and all his friends also knew that. Sven had a special gift because Sven could tell stories better than anyone else. When he spoke, people listened. When he told stories, people forgot time. And one day, Sven told a story about rain falling from the sky. And his friends clapped and said, "Bravo, Sven, you will be rich as a storyteller." And Sven laughed and said, "I am already rich." But weeks passed, and money went away very fast, because Sven spent it without thinking. And one day a servant said, "Sir, the money is gone," and Sven shouted impossible, but it was true. The gold was gone, the silver was gone, and Sven sold his beautiful things. But still he spent money on friends, and at last there was nothing left, only an old dressing gown, a pair of slippers, and the old trunk, and Sven cried and said, "I have nothing." And when he touched the trunk he found a key, and when he opened it something magic happened. Because the trunk began to move, to shake, and then it flew into the air, and Sven was so surprised and scared, but also excited, because the trunk flew high over the sea and over the mountains. And then it landed in a strange land, and Sven stepped out and hid the trunk under a tree, and he walked into a busy market. And everyone there wore dressing gowns and slippers, so no one noticed Sven, and he saw a big palace, and someone said, "That is the palace of the Sultan and the Sultana, and their daughter, the princess, lives there." And Sven thought, "I must see the princess," and he flew on the trunk at night and went into the palace, and there he saw the princess sleeping. And she was very beautiful, and Sven looked at her for a long time, and when she woke up and saw him, she was afraid and said, "Who are you?" And Sven said quickly, "Do not be afraid. I am an angel from a flying trunk." And the princess was confused. But Sven began to tell a story, and his words were soft and beautiful, and the princess listened, and she smiled, and Sven asked, "Will you marry me?" And the princess laughed and said, "You are very strange, but you tell wonderful stories." And she said, "Come back and tell a story to my parents. My father likes funny stories. My mother likes stories with a lesson. If they like it, I will marry you." And Sven was very happy, and he worked all night to make a perfect story. And the next day he stood before the Sultan and the Sultana and told a story about proud matches that wanted to shine and burn bright to impress others, but they burned too fast and were gone. And at the end, Sven said, "The lesson is this: never burn yourself to make others happy. Be yourself." And the Sultan and the Sultana clapped and said, Wonderful. You can marry our daughter." And there was a big celebration. Lights everywhere, music in the streets. And Sven wanted to impress everyone more, so he filled the trunk with firecrackers and flew into the sky, and the sky became bright. But suddenly something went wrong, and the trunk flew away, and Sven was alone, and he understood the lesson of his own story, because he had tried too hard to impress others, and he lost everything again, and Sven walked away with no money, no trunk, no princess, but he had one thing left, his stories, and he went from place to place, telling stories to people, and he was happy. Because he learned that being himself and doing what he loved was more important than money or praise. And that is how Sven became Sven the storyteller.